On April 14th, 2025,
Once a dolphin starts doing a vocalization like a whistle, it can try to complete the end of it.
Google CEO Sundar Pichai posted a single announcement on X that stopped the internet in its tracks. A revelation that Google had built an artificial intelligence that was learning to speak dolphin, and that it had already generated sounds so accurate that the lead researcher, a man who had spent years failing to produce anything close to a real dolphin vocalization, using conventional software, literally danced around the room the first time he heard what the machine created. The model is called Dolphin Gemma, and what it is uncovering about dolphin communication might force us to rethink everything we thought we knew about language, intelligence, and which species on this planet actually have something to say. For millions of years, dolphins have been communicating right beneath the surface of the ocean. Now, for the first time, AI may be helping us hear the patterns we were never able to understand before. But to understand why this AI matters, you first have to understand what dolphins actually are. Most people still imagine dolphins as cute, hoop-jumping theme park performers. But that image is a watered-down cartoon of a much stranger and more intelligent animal. For decades, their real cognitive abilities have made researchers question whether dolphins should be classified differently from almost every other non-human species on Earth. They know their own names, and they invented them. Dolphins recognize themselves in mirrors, and while that might sound simple, it is anything but. The mirror self-recognition test was developed in 1970 by psychologist Gordon Gallup. It is one of the gold standards for measuring self-awareness. Researchers place a mark on an animal's body somewhere it cannot normally see, then give the animal a mirror. If the animal uses that mirror to inspect the mark, it understands that the reflection is itself. That means it is not reacting to another animal. It is recognizing its own identity. Only a handful of species on Earth have ever passed this test, including great apes, elephants, magpies, and dolphins. Young bottlenose dolphins have demonstrated mirror self-recognition as early as 7 months old. That is remarkable because human children do not typically pass the same test until they are 18 to 24 months old. But it goes deeper than knowing they exist. In the 1960s, researchers first proposed something extraordinary. Each bottlenose dolphin develops a completely unique sound called a signature whistle. It functions almost like a name, and even more strangely, that name is not inherited genetically or simply copied from a parent. It is self-created. Each calf, within the first few months of life, listens to the whistles of the dolphins around it, and then creates a completely original sound pattern that will identify it for the rest of its life. And it does not just use its own name, it calls other dolphins by theirs. Research on more than 250 wild bottlenose dolphins in Sarasota Bay, Florida, confirmed how specific these whistles really are. When dolphins are separated, they copy the signature whistle of the exact individual they want to find. In other words, they are calling a specific dolphin's name across the ocean. And when that dolphin hears its name, it responds, not to random sounds, not to unfamiliar whistles, only to its own name when it is called by someone it knows. And here is where it gets strange. A 2013 study led by Dr. Jason Bruck at the University of Chicago tested something even stranger. Could dolphins remember the signature whistles of former companions they had not seen in over 20 years? To find out, researchers studied 53 bottlenose dolphins across 6 captive facilities. They played recordings of whistles from dolphins the test subjects had once known, alongside whistles from strangers they had never met. The dolphins ignored the unfamiliar whistles completely. But when they heard the whistle of an old companion, even after 20 years and 6 months of zero contact, their behavior changed. They swam directly to the speaker, hovered around it, and they tried to call back. That made it the longest social memory ever recorded in any non-human species on Earth. And it gets even stranger than that. In 2022, Brooke and his colleagues published a follow-up study in Science Advances that revealed dolphins do not just recognize a whistle as a familiar sound. When a dolphin hears another dolphin's signature whistle, it actually forms a mental image of that specific individual. The team proved this using a cross-modal experiment, and strangely enough, it involved urine. Dolphins sampled the urine of known companions by holding their mouths open in the water for significantly longer than they did for strangers, And when the researchers paired a signature whistle with urine from the same dolphin, the test subjects responded far more strongly than when the whistle and urine came from two different familiar dolphins. What this means is that the whistle triggered a full mental concept of a specific individual: identity, relationship, memory. The same way hearing a friend's name makes you picture their face. The problem scientists could never solve until now. So you have an animal that knows it exists, invents its own name, calls others by theirs, remembers companions for decades, and builds mental pictures of individuals from sound alone. And the obvious question becomes, what else is it saying? That question has haunted marine biology for half a century, because signature whistles are just one tiny piece of dolphin communication. Beyond the names, there are thousands of other vocalizations. There are clicks arranged in dense patterns, burst pulses that shift in rhythm and intensity, and whistles that seem to carry meaning nobody can decode. Dolphins produce three basic categories of sound: clicks for echolocation, burst pulses linked to social situations like fighting, playing, and courtship, and whistles. But even a few minutes of dolphin recording could take researchers hours to catalog manually. The patterns were too dense, too fast, and too alien for the human ear to process. Scientists knew the data held something significant. They just could not get to it fast enough, and that is exactly where Dolphin Gemma came in. Dolphin Gemma, the AI that hears what we cannot. In April 2025, Google announced Dolphin Gemma in partnership with the Georgia Institute of Technology and the Wild Dolphin Project. It was described as the first large language model ever built for a non-human species. The model was trained on tens of thousands of hours of acoustic recordings from wild Atlantic spotted dolphins. Those recordings were collected over nearly 40 years by Dr. Denise Herzing and her team in the Bahamas. Herzing, who National Geographic calls the Jane Goodall of the sea, founded the Wild Dolphin Project in 1985, and it remains the longest-running underwater dolphin research project in the world. Dolphin Gemma does not translate dolphin sounds into English. It does something more interesting. It learns the structure of dolphin communication in a way similar to how a language model learns the structure of human language. It identifies patterns and predicts what vocalization comes next in a sequence. And it detects relationships between sounds and behaviors that human researchers could never isolate on their own. The model uses roughly 400 million parameters and runs on a Google Pixel phone, meaning researchers can take it into the water with them and analyze dolphin sounds in real time. The early results were staggering. Dolphin Gemma was distinguishing over a dozen click variants that had previously sounded identical to the human ear. It was predicting the next vocalization in a dolphin sequence with over 74% accuracy, and it was generating synthetic dolphin sounds that were shockingly convincing. Dr. Thad Starner, the Google DeepMind research scientist and Georgia Tech professor leading the project, said he had tried and failed for years to produce realistic burst pulses using conventional software. But the AI created them on its own, using nothing but what it had learned from the data. Denise Herzing put the scale of this in perspective when she said it would take human researchers 150 years to manually process the data and extract the same patterns that Dolphin Gemma finds in days. And the dream goes further than pattern detection. The team has also built a wearable underwater device called CHAT. CHAT stands for Cetacean Hearing and Telemetry. The device allows a diver to generate synthetic dolphin-like whistles. These are made-up words designed by AI to refer to specific objects dolphins enjoy, like sargassum seaweed or rope toys. Two divers swim alongside a dolphin, use the synthetic sound to label an object, and pass it back and forth. And if the dolphin mimics the sound and responds, a shared vocabulary begins to form, an entirely new language built between species from scratch rather than human language imposed onto dolphins. Field tests using the chat system with Dolphin Gemma, running on Pixel 9 phones, began in the Bahamas in the summer of 2025, marking the first time AI was deployed in real-time two-way communication attempts with wild dolphins. Dolphins are not the only ones talking. Dolphins are not the only species whose communication is cracking open under AI. In May 2024, researchers from MIT and Project SETI published a groundbreaking study in Nature Communications. They announced that they had identified sperm whale phonetic alphabet. To do this, they used machine learning to analyze over 9,000 recordings of Caribbean sperm whales. They discovered that the click patterns whales use to communicate, called codas, vary depending on conversational context. Some clicks function like suffixes, the tempo shifts, the rhythm changes, and the structure adjusts based on who the whale is talking to and what is happening around them. The researchers identified at least 143 distinct combinations, revealing a combinatorial system with striking parallels to human phonetics. And a follow-up analysis found that when you speed up sperm whale codas and strip out the silences, they contain elements that function like vowels, with 2 whale vowels identified so far. Meanwhile, the Earth Species Project has built Nature LM Audio. The nonprofit is backed by LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman and the Paul Allen Foundation. Nature LM Audio is the first large-scale audio language model designed for animal sounds across many species. It can identify species, distinguish sex and life stage from vocalizations, and process massive bioacoustic datasets in minutes instead of months. They are currently studying carrion crows, jumping spiders, zebra finches, Hawaiian crows, and beluga whales. And the organization recently secured $17 million in grants to expand their work. What happens when we actually understand them? This is where the story takes a turn that most people are not expecting. Because the closer scientists get to understanding what dolphins are actually communicating, the more uncomfortable the implications become. If dolphins have names, then they are not just making random sounds. If they call each other across open water and wait for a response, then something social and intentional is happening. If they remember individuals for 20 years, then their relationships may be far deeper than we imagined. And if they show metacognition, the ability to recognize when they do not know the answer to a problem, then their intelligence becomes even harder to dismiss. So, if AI confirms that their vocalizations contain structured, context-dependent patterns that look like language, the question becomes impossible to avoid. What exactly are they? What does it mean that we have been keeping them in concrete tanks for entertainment? And what does it mean that military sonar exercises flood their world with sounds so intense that it has been linked to internal hemorrhaging, ruptured lung tissue, and mass strandings? In the year 2000, 17 whales beached themselves in the Bahamas during a United States Navy sonar exercise, and a federal investigation concluded the most likely cause was acoustic trauma from mid-frequency sonar, while the Navy itself estimates its planned activities could alter the behavior of up to 1.78 million marine mammals annually. Thad Starner, the Google DeepMind scientist behind Dolphin Gemma, said something that stays with you, that if dolphins have language, then they probably also have culture, and if they have culture, then we need to understand what their priorities are, what they actually talk about. We are about to find out, and whatever the answer turns out to be, it is going to change the way we think about every other species on this planet. For 40 years, Denise Herdzing swam with the same dolphins, recorded their sounds, cataloged their lives, and waited for a tool powerful enough to crack the code. And she described Dolphin Gemma as being like a new kind of microphone, one that hears patterns humans could never recognize on their own. That microphone is on now, and for the first time in the history of life on Earth, we might actually be able to hear what another species has been trying to say. The real question is whether what they have been saying this whole time will change how we treat them. Because if dolphins have been calling each other by name, mourning their dead, and teaching their children for millions of years before we ever showed up, then we are not discovering their language. We are just finally catching up.